Okay, so let's go ahead and start making some modifications to the program now. And so here I am in the directory where I've saved the game files. And you can see on my computer it's under the D drive because I have actually an external SD card reader connected to my computer as well, which is actually quite handy to make it a lot easier to access the SD cards rather than trying to fiddle with the one that's built into the side of the computer. I find it a lot easier to use an external SD card reader, so I've added an external card reader to my computer, which makes things a lot easier. So here I am on the D drive, and these are the files that come along with the game when you download it. And down at the bottom here is the source code.txt file that we took a look at, which is the very helpful source code file that shows you a complete listing of the entire game. And that's what I actually used to take a look at the game and look through it and look through the listing to see where I might want to make some changes to it. So you might want to take a look at that for yourself as well. And there are a couple other files in here that we're interested in. One is this Ranble game.bas file, which is the basic program file for the game, as well as a bit later on when we look at editing the sprite graphics, we're going to be looking up here at this Ranble7gfx.spr file. So for now, let's go ahead and open this basic game file by pressing enter. And there we are in our game file. And the text that's showing is actually smaller than you would normally see it because I've changed the screen resolution by adjusting the number of columns visible on the screen. And the way I do that on my external keyboard that I have connected to my Spectrum Next computer is by pressing Shift-1 to bring up this menu. And then if I go down here to this selection that shows the different column number selections available, either 32, 64, or 85, and if I press enter, it cycles through the different options. So this is the 32 column mode, which you can see the text is quite large and a bit difficult to understand when you're looking through a long listing, I find. So I'll go ahead and press Shift-1 again to bring up the menu. And if I go back down here to this selection and press enter again, now we're in 64 column mode. And if I do that one more time, it will bring me into 85 column mode, which I think is a good, comfortable mode for me to work in. So I'm just going to stay in this mode to do my modifications. And so what is the first modification that I actually want to do? Well, the first thing I want to do is to adjust the number of lives that are available to us in the game. By default, you have a maximum of 3 lives that you can have in the game, and I want to just adjust that so that we can actually add more lives as we complete each level, so we can get awarded a bonus life every time we complete a level. But as you can see, when I run this game, I'll just type run now, and I'll press J to select joystick to start the game. And you can see in the top right there are 3 ship icons which indicate how many lives we have remaining. And there's actually only enough room to print 3 ship icons, and the maximum number of lives we can have is 3. So I want to be able to have more than 3 lives by adjusting how many lives you get awarded to you. For example, when we complete a level, I would like to have another extra life awarded. But since there's only room to print 3 lives, or rather 3 ship icons on the top right of the screen, I want to change that to a text display instead of printing ship icons. So the first modification I want to do is to remove those ship icons. And if I go back to the program here, in the listing I found that it's actually at line 1395. So if I do a listing of line 1395 by typing list 1395, so if you take a look at line 1395, we can see that it's a for next loop, which is used to actually print those ship graphics or ship sprites, and it prints the number of them based on how many lives we have remaining. So I don't want to print those icons anymore, so I'm just going to rem out this line. And if you're not already familiar with what remming out a line means, although I'm sure most of you probably are, it just means that we type the word rem in front of it, which converts it into a comment so that the computer will actually ignore it and not execute that line when the program is running. So I'm going to do that now. I'll just go over here and I'll insert the word rem, which is short for remark, and I'll press enter, and now that line is remmed out, which means that line will no longer execute when the program is running. And with the spectrum next, there are actually two ways we could rem out a line. We can actually, instead of typing the word rem, we could insert a semicolon instead. As you can see, line 1390 has a semicolon here, which is the same as putting the word rem. So, for example, this line 1390 will not get executed when the program runs because it's just a comment. So let's go ahead and delete this rem statement, and instead we'll replace it with a semicolon, like that. And now line 1395 should no longer run when the program executes, which means if we run the program again now, we should no longer see those three ship sprite graphics on the top right of the screen. So let's check that out. I'll just type run, and I'll press J for joystick. And there you can see we no longer have those three ship icons at the top right of the screen. And now we have room, we can put some text there to indicate how many lives we have remaining. So let's go back into the program now. And now I want to enter a new line of code which will print how many lives we have remaining. And just by looking through the program listing and running the program and experimenting, I kind of figured out that a good place to put it seems to be at line 1396, which is right down here between 1395 and 1400. So I'm going to just enter a new line 1396, and I'm going to put print at %0, %22. And in case you don't already know, what those percent symbols do is to indicate that the numbers that come after them are integer values. And the reason that we put integer values into a program is to make it execute more quickly, so that otherwise, if you don't put those percent symbols there, from my understanding, is that the computer will treat these numbers as floating point decimal numbers, which obviously takes a lot more calculation power to try and manipulate a floating point number which could have several decimal places rather than integer numbers. So we're going to convert these numbers to integers, which is what Kevin has done with pretty much all of the numbers in this program. I can see most of them have that percent sign in front of them. So I'll just do it for these numbers as well. So I'm going to print at position 0, 22, which is line number 0, column 22, and then I'll put a semicolon and then Control P to get the quotation mark, and I'm going to go into caps lock mode and type the word lives, space, quote, semicolon, and now I'm going to enter a variable which is a variable called lives. So the variable is actually called lives, and that keeps track of how many lives we have left. So now this line, if I press enter, should print the word lives followed by the number of lives we have left, and it'll print that at the top right corner of the screen. So let's go ahead and run it and see if that works. Press J for joystick again, and there you can see we have the word lives at the top of the screen, and it shows how many lives we have left. And let's see if we crash our vehicle, what happens to our live counter. So we don't actually know if our number of lives decreased when we crashed, although it probably did because it didn't make any adjustments to the program that calculates how many lives we have left. We just displayed how many lives we have left. So the listing is no longer showing at the top of the screen though, because in the program there are different locations within the code where different things get printed. So we need to go back and make some more adjustments. And we'll go back and clean that up later, but the next thing I want to do, if we go back to the listing here, is now I want to actually display on the screen an indicator that will tell us what level we're on. Since the game actually changes levels periodically every time you proceed to a new landscape or terrain type, it changes levels. And so why not show that on the screen? So that would be kind of cool to be able to see. So the next thing we're going to do is to add a line on the screen that shows us what level we're on. So by taking a look through the listing, it seemed like a good place to put that display would be at line 122. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a new line, which is line 122, and maybe I'll just list that first. So we can see that there is no line 122 here now, and this will be in the main game loop for this game. So that seems like a good place to put the display of what level we're on. So we'll go ahead and enter line 122, which is print at, and I'm going to print this at row 23, column 0. So I'll use the percent signs again to convert these numbers into integers to save speed and also memory. So I'll put print at 23, comma 0, semicolon, quote, then I'll type the word level, space, quote, and now I'll put a semicolon followed by the variable that is used to keep track of which level we're on. And the variable that does that is called the H variable. And actually the way the program keeps track of what level you're on is it actually uses H plus 1 to keep track of the current level. So that's what I'm going to put here as well. I'm going to put my percent sign and then H plus 1. So now this line should print which level number we're on as we play the game. So let's run the game again and test that out. And there you can see in the bottom left of the screen, it prints the word level followed by which level we're on. So far, so good. Now, one other thing I want to do here is if we go to the top of this listing by typing the word list, and we can see if you take a look at line 9 here, where it says save Ranble game.bas, right here, line 9000. So what this line does is it automatically saves the game every time it's run by saving it under a name called ranblegame.bas, and then this line 9000 at the end tells the program to execute starting from line 9000 once it's loaded and run. So you can also see at the beginning of this line there's a semicolon, which means this line has been commented out, so it's no longer going to actually execute when the program runs, because I'm guessing Kevin was using this line to save his game as he went along while he was programming it. But now, since we're making modifications to it, we can put our own line here to save the game as we're making those modifications. So why don't we put that line, maybe here's a free line, we can use line number 11 here. So I'm going to just duplicate that line and type line 11, save, and I'm going to call my game Ranble underline mod for modification .bas, and then I'll put the line 9000 designation at the end as well to make it start from line 9000 when it runs, since that's the way Kevin has indicated the program needs to execute when it starts up. So I'll just follow that formatting as well. And now every time I run my program, it will save all of the mods that I've made under this file name, Ranble mod.bas. So that will be the new name for this game file. And now, if I run it, and I'll just exit out of the program now because I don't need to actually play it, and I'm going to go back to my menu, and if I exit and go to the browser, we should see my new file that has been saved automatically called ranblemod.bas, which is right here at the bottom. So when I enter that line in my program, every time I run it, it will now save the game automatically for me under this new name. So now, why don't I go ahead and open up this new modified version of the program, and I can use this one to continue making my modifications.